Hello, dear friends. Today we continue our acquaintance with the memoirs of the Wehrmacht general. In this part, we will learn about his opinion on the fierce battles near Moscow in the winter of 1941. Don't forget to rate the video. And let's get started. December 8th, 1941. I wish you both a Merry Christmas with all my heart. I dare not wish you a happy one. The war weighs so heavily on us and on the entire German people. Unfortunately, I cannot give you anything from here. I cannot even tell you that I have acquired some furs. They were confiscated for the benefit of the Reich. I don't know where we will celebrate the holiday, but it will probably not be in Gryaznovo, which translates as Dreckdorf, dirty village. I would not want to celebrate Christmas here, where we have been for more than 4 weeks, where everything is so cramped and everything reminds us of unpleasant experiences. I also don't know how we will celebrate the holiday. I fully expect that the Russians will do everything possible to spoil it for us. They will say that the Germans will be distracted on that day, so we will attack them. And therefore it is quite likely that our silent night will be filled with cannon fire. We, the staff officers and the troops, would prefer to stop before winter. Then we would have battered but combat-ready troops, positions suitable for combat, and winter quarters. Right now we have none of that. I read with great regret that our Munster has suffered so much. Nevertheless, we want to keep our quarters. I want to keep the feeling that I have a home somewhere. December 11th. Report to my family. The fighting has continued since November 19th. It has been very heavy, very bloody, and because of the winter, requiring unprecedented efforts. Between November 27th and 30th, we took Alexin. This town, located on a wooded hill in the Oka River bend, was, like Tula, a cornerstone of the defensive positions built by the Russians south of Moscow. In order not to be recognized in the snow and fired upon prematurely, we again began the battle at night. We did not intend to take the enemy by surprise, but in some places we succeeded. However, on the whole, we were stuck in the enemy's positions, and only with great difficulty broke through them by evening. Wide minefields in some places put our infantry in a difficult position, and we had to overcome several critical situations. Our troops, which have been on the offensive since June, are no longer what they were at the beginning of the campaign. Many of our best soldiers are no longer with us. It took all our dedication and willpower to prevail against all the obstacles. I was on the battlefield from morning till night for 3 days. It was -10 degrees Celsius, with an easterly wind blowing. I experienced all the hardships, all the worries, the artillery fire, and the cold. It took the Russians 36 hours to recover from this blow. Then they brought in new forces from Moscow and Tula and began to storm our positions. Oh yes, I will never forget how the regiment commander, whose men had been repelling one attack after another from 1 a.m. to 9 a.m., sometimes in bayonet combat, said with a tremor and almost tears in his eyes, "One more assault like this and we won't be able to hold out." The officers and soldiers have no strength left. They simply can't go on. And how their expressions changed when I replied, "I'll give you my reserves. They'll be here in 3 hours." One pitiful battalion, probably 160 bayonets. That's all we have now. But for them, in their situation, it was a royal gift. And look at the guys who have been fighting the enemy for weeks in this cold. 30 men huddled together in a lice-infested shack, without soap, unwashed and unshaven for many days, with festering wounds all over their bodies from constant scabies caused by lice. In torn uniforms, covered with dirt and parasites. And listen to what all these people, whom the doctor had declared unfit for service because of festering wounds on their feet, said on November 26th. "We will not go to the hospital. We will not abandon our comrades before the attack begins." And with their feet bandaged, without socks, they went into battle the next day at -10 degrees Celsius. Or young Lieutenant Hockmeister, whom I visited at his company's location, showed me his soldiers, and the next morning he was found unconscious. He had been wounded 3 times a few days ago, but kept quiet, not wanting to abandon his company, which had already lost almost all of its junior commanders. Despite all this, we attacked again on December 5th. The situation forced us to do so. The tanks had bypassed Tula from the east, leaving us with only a small gap of 20 kilometers to close in the enemy's rear. Our units stood alone under fierce enemy attacks on the enemy's main supply line between Tula and Moscow. It would have been a crime not to take advantage of this situation and complete the encirclement of the Russians. All our previous attacks had the same goal. All the previous sacrifices were preparation for this final step, which now had to be taken. But it was difficult to reorganize the Corps' forces in such a short time so that they would be sufficient to accomplish the task. 2 regiments, still fresh and not so badly battered by battle, were suitable for this. While we were planning the operation, there was a blizzard and, by our standards, warm weather, 2 degrees or -3 degrees. When we attacked at midnight 24 hours later, it was -32 degrees. The left regiment cheerfully fought its way to the first target. It had only 8 kilometers to go to reach the tanks. However, the right regiment got stuck while overcoming the Russian position. During the day, it stormed it twice, with partial success. But overall, the regiment got bogged down near fortified villages, occupied by the Russians, without any shelter, and lying in the snow at -32 degrees Celsius. By noon, the losses from frostbite were so great that the troops were melting away before our eyes. The third attack, scheduled for 2 p.m., did not take place, as some companies consisted of only a few men. I gathered all the artillery, and at 4:30 p.m. a new assault began, but again it was unsuccessful. The battalion, well known in our army even in peacetime, which was supposed to carry out the task, had practically ceased to exist due to frostbite. And so, with the onset of darkness, I was so close to the desired goal, for which we had fought hard for weeks, so close that I could reach out and touch it. But the troops that were supposed to do it were slipping through my fingers. There was nothing left to do but to suggest to the command to cancel the operation. The situation was similar elsewhere, although not as bad as ours. The order to abandon the operation came quickly from above. So close to the goal, we were ready to take the final step, but higher powers snatched what we had almost achieved from our hands. All in all, thank God that the decision was made to retreat. The next day, it was -35 degrees, then -22. Had we continued the attack, in 48 hours we would have had no troops left. On the 4th day, such heavy snowdrifts began that it was extremely difficult to bring in supplies. Had we continued our battle, we would not only have frozen to death, but probably also starved to death. I don't know if my brief description of events can convey all the ups and downs of our desires, hopes, sacrifices, new offensives, achievements, and ultimately failures that filled those days. These were certainly not peaceful pre-Christmas days. Rather, they were the most difficult weeks of this campaign. And now perhaps you will better understand the full meaning of the Wehrmacht report, which came out 24 hours after our actions. Now the course of operations is dictated by the Russian winter. But both warring sides must obey the laws of winter. I don't know if the Russians were asked about this. So far, they are not inclined to do so. On the contrary, they are fiercely attacking in various directions. The Siberians have arrived. Accustomed to the cold and well-dressed, these temperatures seem moderate to them. And that is why the Russians can boast of not-so-insignificant achievements in various places. What we have experienced is also happening on other fronts, only on a larger scale. In some places we were 25 kilometers from the center of Moscow. I have my doubts as to whether we will be able to hold out and remain there. We were driven out of Rostov. So, at the moment, the overall situation is not very satisfactory. I have repeatedly emphasized that the Russians have been severely beaten, but not yet defeated. We feel their stubborn resistance time and time again. The arrival of their Far Eastern forces will cause us further problems this winter. The Russians will only be defeated after they suffer defeat in the new summer campaign of 1942. For now, it seems that during the winter he intends to attack our exhausted and depleted troops with all his might. So we welcome Japan's entry into the war all the more. I do not expect it to take action against Russia in the foreseeable future, but it will stop, or at least hinder the supply of materials to Russia from America and England. And for us, this is already a great victory. For example, everything we see in the latest battles points to a reduction in the number of enemy aircraft, artillery, and tanks. It will be very difficult for the Russians to compensate for this shortage with their own forces. Yes, they took all the equipment from the factories we captured with them. Some of it may have reached its destination, but some of it is just sitting somewhere on the railroad tracks. By the time they build the facilities where this equipment can be put into operation, winter will be over, and that is a great advantage for us. I'm equally pleased that Rommel is generally holding the African front. For them, Japan's entry into the war is also a relief. If the Italians suffer another defeat, it will have a serious impact on their already shaky morale. Defeat in Libya could lead to the loss of all of Africa, and I can imagine that someone will then come up with the idea of using North Africa, Spain, Portugal, and perhaps the unoccupied part of France to land in Europe while the evil Germans are busy elsewhere. I hope that with Japan's entry into the war, all these delusional ideas will be nipped in the bud. Our yellow comrades started the war very suddenly and very successfully. Right now it is snowing, and the wind is strong. The roads are almost impassable. The icy wind chills you to the bone even through fur. I tried to take my usual route to the dead Russian who has been lying there unburied since the beginning of November, but I couldn't get through. In recent weeks, we have had to deal with enormous problems in terms of supplies. Often, the troops were simply starving. Tobacco, tea, and ersatz coffee have become rare. The fats that are so necessary have hardly reached us at all. Please note that it is not so bad everywhere. We are in a particularly unfortunate corner in terms of supplies. There are no highways or railways leading to us. Trains are stuck in the rear areas for several days due to broken engines, sabotage, or blown-up tracks. So this heavy snowfall is not at all to our advantage. It will only make the situation worse. Yesterday I read Stalin's speech from October 24th, which the Russians dropped to us in the form of a printed leaflet in good German. In particular, he hopes that the German army, badly beaten during the summer campaign, will not be able to withstand the Russian winter, supply difficulties, and the attacks of fresh Russian winter troops arriving from Siberia. Some of them were thrown into the battle for Moscow and are therefore badly battered, but some are leading the offensive. Now our task is to hold out. So all dreams of leave and home are pointless. Incidentally, I don't think it's possible from a transport point of view either. On the advice of Count Moya, I read several stories by Tolstoy and Leskov. Tolstoy's estate is just south of Tula, where the division headquarters is located. His land holdings, Tolstoy's estates, are very close to us. They are nothing more than abandoned shacks. Leskov is known as one of the best Russian storytellers. The books made a great impression on me. One can only marvel at the power of Tolstoy's descriptions and the clarity with which he portrays characters. After reading him, I solved the riddle of why everything in Russia is so backward and neglected. His story, The Landowner's Mourning, depicts the peasants we see every day. Good-natured, obedient, but without any initiative. They themselves do not take on anything. On the contrary, they reject everything good if it interferes with their beloved order of things. And they do not want to know about any improvements. With such people, progress cannot be achieved. Given this state of affairs, my interpreter says, 2 German protectorates have already been formed. They will become good colonies. The rest of Russia will break up into independent republics. The Soviet government itself has already prepared for this. Up to Lake Baikal, they will be dependent on Germany, and further on Japan. Thus, the problem of Russia will be solved. I have just received a letter from Hartmut, dated November 29th, from Orel. He returned there during the difficult fighting that is now taking place east of Tula. May God protect him. The fighting here is fierce. We are looking to the near future with concern. December 12th, letter to my wife. The person who was supposed to deliver the report did not leave today. I myself got stuck in the snow 3 kilometers from our dirty village and had to turn back. I gave orders to have fresh horses ready in the future so that we can travel like old Napoleon on a sleigh, changing horses. This country is useless by any standard, in its size, its forests, its climate, or its population. Because of lice, we recently had 2 cases of typhus. Everything ugly and hideous is gathered here. I just received your letters from Münster. They are 4 weeks old. How wonderful it would be to be in my own apartment, which now stands empty and cold. Since we are now officially at war with America, it is impossible to say when we will use the apartment again. You can clearly imagine all this, and then you have to literally force yourself to get up. I have spent my life in a real war. I have lived much longer in a situation similar to war. On top of everything else, the Russians are not thinking about a winter respite, as we would like them to. They are attacking across the entire front, and in some places are achieving significant successes that go beyond the local scale. And we do not feel particularly safe. Endless territories must be held with minimal forces. The enemy is concentrating its forces somewhere, and that is where we immediately have a problem. In addition, we are all physically and morally exhausted after a 6-month campaign. We do not feel happy at all. December 16th, letter to his wife. It is with great concern that I write to you about the developments here. The Russians have made such large holes in our thin front in several places that they have forced us to retreat. Everything is happening under the same conditions as in 1812. Deep snow, almost impassable roads, sleet, blizzards, and frost. I don't know what will come of this. Right now, we can only hope that we will be able to stop the enemy. But in our circle, it is not very clear how to do this. Moreover, our child is in the thick of these events. He arrived at the front almost on the very day when the situation began to change. I think about him all the time. But my own worries are piling up like mountains, and I don't see a way out yet. The weather, the terrain, and the natural conditions everywhere are taking away any means we have to change the situation. Our high command thought it would be possible to turn a blind eye to conditions that are beyond human strength and that are breaking us. Throughout the entire First World War, I have never been in a situation like the one we are experiencing now. The outcome is in God's hands. These days may prove decisive for the course of the war. December 17th. Letter to my wife. After our countless warnings, the top brass seems to have finally realized the current danger. They will finally send help. God willing, it will arrive in time. The situation is just damn serious. No, it's even worse. It's tense to the limit. No one can say now whether everything will end well. First and foremost, tomorrow will be a day full of worries. Everything would not be so bad if the officers and soldiers were not so exhausted by 6 months of endless fighting and constant physical and moral pressure. Adding fuel to the fire is the fact that our depleted units are so ridiculously small, and that our supplies and equipment are completely unsuitable for the Russian winter. I am constantly worried about our boy. Right now, it's about -10 degrees Celsius, with 30 to 40 centimeters of snow on the ground and frequent drifts. There are unprecedented problems with marching, black ice, and as a result, all the vehicles and other equipment are slipping. I've been suffering from terrible diarrhea for 4 days and have started taking opium. May God help us get through this crisis. December 19th. Letter to my wife. Yesterday, after some very heavy fighting, we were able to hold back the enemy who was pressing us. However, this does not change the overall situation, which is still more than serious. Now even the High Command has realized that the fate of the entire campaign is at stake. Before that, no one had heard our warnings. Both at the top and at the bottom, enough reports were written about the state and weakness of our troops. Ignoring the lack of winter uniforms, inadequate food, unsatisfactory supplies, and insufficient manpower, the High Command wanted to advance on Moscow and Guderian on Tula. All precautions were rejected. Now they say, sacrifice yourselves so that the situation can be rectified. I hope that we will still be able to overcome the crisis by gathering all our strength. For 48 hours now, the Führer himself has been working to send us all possible help. We cannot predict what else will happen. God willing, the bad weather will not slow down or stop this aid. The distance to Germany is great, and transport capabilities are limited, while the enemy has all its reserves at hand. As of today, we have moved from Guderian's army to Kluge's. We are happy about this, as the command was not clear and reliable before. That's all for today. If you liked the video, please support it with a like and subscribe to the channel. Bye for now. See you next time.